Welcome everybody back to the Innovative Agency. Sharon Torek here with you again, and I'm loving in advance for all of you this conversation that we're about to have on today's episode, because I think it's very easy in agency land to sort of muddy the waters between creativity, creative, and innovation. And we know this is a podcast about innovation in the agency world, and so I am excited to talk with you today, Tom Shapiro. Thank you for joining us on the show. I really appreciate it.
It's great to be here, Sharon. Thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. So let's just talk briefly about your experience to get some level setting here. You are the founder and CEO of Stratabeat, which is an agency that serves B2B tech-based businesses.
That's right.
Um, but you've also run and scaled other agencies, right? Before your career as a founder.
Yeah. So before Stratabeat, I actually worked at an agency in Boston called iProspect, and I was the 85th employee. It was having a lot of difficulty growing when I joined it. I guess it was my second day on the job when the CEO brought myself and a few others into a conference room and locked the door and said, "We're not leaving until we fix this." And it was my second day on the job. I had no idea what was going on.
Oh my
And
gosh.
found out that the agency was having a very difficult time making any sales.
Oh
Uh,
boy.
and and so we came up with a lot of um, what turned out to be highly effective ways of changing the agency and
Mhm.
evolving the agency, whether it was sales, whether it was marketing. And we wound up growing a lot. We grew from 85 employees to over 700 employees in just 5 years.
Mhm. Wow, that's crazy. That's explosive growth. I think that's an episode on change management we might have to do at a later date too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is really explosive growth. Um, so one of the things that fascinates me about your work is sort of the body of thought leadership you've been putting out there around creativity and running an agency, which most folks listening, their brains would immediately, and so would mine, by the way, immediately go to creative. And I'm as someone who serves the agency world, I think of creative in different ways. I think there are creative ways to solve legal problems. I think there's creative ways to solve business problems. But when you use that term in ad land, if you will, it's usually the creative concept that, defines a campaign, or sort of a central idea that is at the heart of a campaign to market something. But creativity is really so much more than that. And I'd love for you to share your perspective, first of all, on how you define it vis-a-vis creative and vis-a-vis innovation, which is also something different. And then why it was important to you to sort of build your body of thought leadership around this way of attacking your clients' business problems.
Yeah. So you're absolutely correct. So creativity is at the heart and soul of Stratabeat and my personal thoughts on running a business as well.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I've written two books, one Rethink Your Marketing, another Rethink Lead Generation. And a common theme in both books is approaching best practices, quote unquote, best practices, and really questioning them. Because if everyone is following best practices, you're going to wind up in a sea of sameness with everyone else. And then you're kind of fighting in this mediocre world where everyone is pretty much doing the same thing or very similar things. And that makes it extremely difficult for prospects or brands to differentiate among agencies, right?
Mhm.
And it makes it hard for anyone to differentiate from any sellers, right? No matter
Right,
what the B2B situation might be.
right.
And so what I did a lot of research for both books and included over 70 case studies of businesses that were able to break through and achieve outstanding, results over time, really, break through all the clutter, unleash growth. And in every single case, they were creative. And I
Mhm.
and not in the sense of silliness or funny or anything like that, not in the sense of like digital agencies talking about creative, right? But actually coming up with unique solutions, coming up with something different, following a different path. And it might have been innovative. In certain cases, it was very innovative. It was very disruptive. You look at someone like Salesforce, right? When they came on the scene, they brought CRM online for a set monthly fee, whereas at the time, Siebel Systems was the 800-pound gorilla, and the entire industry was made up of companies where you had to pay outrageous fees. They had professional services. It cost millions of dollars, multiple years to get these platforms installed and running and maintained. And here was this idea that no, just for $50 a month, it's all online and you just access it whenever you want, nice and easy. And so, something like that is not silly, it's not funny, right? But it's
Mhm.
very creative, right? It's a very creative application that no one had thought of at the time, that also happened to bring a lot of innovation to the software world, right?
Mm.
But in
Right.
other cases, you might just do something that is considered creative. It's something that most companies don't do, where, it might not be quote unquote innovative, but it still is applying creativity. And I'll give you an example. So again, going back to my books, right?
Mhm.
Most agencies do not, they don't write books. They don't use books to market the agency, especially digital agencies, right? Digital
Right.
agencies tend to rely on digital ways to get the word out, to attract traffic, to convert
Sure.
them. And so you might question, well, why did Stratabeat, which is a digital agency, why did I write two books and we marketed those? Well, again, it's a way of doing something that's a bit different. It's a way of cutting through the noise. It's a way of reaching our audience uh, in different platforms. For instance, reaching them when they're in Amazon searching for marketing books, right? It's another way of reaching our target audience. The last book that I wrote, Rethink Lead Generation, has already brought in over $900,000 in new revenue for us. Just
Mhm.
that one book.
Amazing. I think one of my favorite examples too is a non-digital example. I always love to pull out examples of things that guests have done or are doing in their own businesses that we could scale for any size agency. And you talk about um, this whole question of examining with your client what they should do about their approach to attending trade shows and conferences in their industry. They're spending a lot of money, they're taking a lot of people, they're, I'm sure, blowing a lot of cash while they're there, entertaining, wining, dining, all that kind of stuff. And that's all well and good, except it's not getting them the return that they want. And so, what you and your team did, I'm sure your team was a big part of this, was re-engineer that to just say, we're not doing these big events anymore. We're not sending these armies of people. We're going to do small events, and we don't really care if it's a dozen people that come instead of 3,500 people that visit our booth and have the same conversation with us as they're going to have with the next five booths down the row. So I love that example. I love using creativity to think about different ways to develop potential relationships with your intended client target, and building that intimacy with them. But there's got to be some cultural awareness in the agency to actually be brave enough to propose that to a client, right? Because they're used to they've got a whole plan. They know when the major trade shows are in their industry that year. They've got them on their calendar. They're budgeting for. So, walk me through either maybe the rubric you would use within your agency or the framework that you might use to go to your client and say, "Hey, let's think differently about this and let's try a different approach." Because that's a brave thing for an agency's strategist to do with a client because you don't know for sure how it's going to work out your first time, right? So
Yeah,
walk me through that so that agency owners listening can get some inspiration maybe about how to have those conversations with their own clients.
yeah. I think the first principle is it's not necessarily either or. You can do both, and that's what we did, right? So you can test different ideas. And that's a great way of introducing new ideas or innovative ideas or something completely different that the company has never tried before. Maybe they're a little cautious about it. Run a pilot project. We love running pilots and just proving the value of something first without letting go of the legacy marketing, right? And
Right.
so that way the client can be 100% comfortable, but also exploring new opportunities. And then if you can prove that the new opportunity is going to deliver 3x, 5x, 15x the return, right? Then it's much
Yeah.
easier for them to make the full transition. So the example that you were mentioning before, so this is something that we did at iProspect, right?
Yeah.
So we introduced a local road show. We just started with one. We just started with one local road show. Yeah, we got, maybe a dozen people to show up to the first event. So hardly any people, but we got a 7-figure contract out of that one event. And we got a
Mhm.
6-figure contract out of that one event as well. So we got both of those contracts out of the first event. And it
Mhm.
was obviously, very lightweight, very easy to do. We just rented a room in the back of a house of blues. And so it was very, very cool, right? We just, we had as much food as people wanted to have. We had all the alcohol that they wanted. So it was a really, really fun time. And it was a way for us to have conversations that might last an hour with one individual. Whereas you compare that to a trade show or an industry conference where, yeah, you're at an exhibit booth and maybe your conversation is 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes long, right? But you're certainly not going to be able to do a deep dive for an hour with individuals. And
Right.
so it was just better in so many different ways. We didn't have any competitors there. And it really worked. And it became the #1 leads driver for iProspect. Again, taking them from 85 employees all the way up through 705 years, that was the #1 leads driver. Now, okay, let's say that we're not necessarily talking about events, but we're talking about anything that is new
Right.
and right.
That you haven't tried before. Yeah.
Yeah, and the client might be a little nervous about it, right? They might be nervous to pull the trigger because it's their job on the line, right?
Yeah.
So what you want to do is create a matrix. We love this matrix. We use it all the time. It's a decision-making matrix. And so you list up all of your ideas that you want to explore and consider. And so you brainstorm those and you put those in the left-hand column. And then what you're going to do for every single idea that you want to explore further is you're going to look at, well, how quickly can we implement it? And
Right.
if you can implement it quickly, then it's labeled green, right? You color it green.
Mhm.
And if it takes a long time, that's going to be red. If it's something that's takes a moderate amount of time, then you color that cell yellow in your spreadsheet, right? In the matrix.
Mhm.
So we look at speed. We also look at cost, right? We look at returns. And the returns can be revenue, but it could also be leads. It could be market awareness. It depends on your goals, right? Attendees, registrations, whatever it is. And then
Right.
you also look at ROI as one of the factors. And so that's looking at your returns over the costs, right?
Right.
Um, and so when you're looking at speed and cost and returns and ROI, it makes it very, very clear when you're looking at this matrix what you should do. Because in certain cases, you're going to have certain parameters you need to work within. Let's say that you have a specific budget. Well, that means, you can color the cost column red if it's over your budget, which means you
Got it.
disqualify anything immediately that's over your budget, right? And you
Right.
only consider those that are within your budget. Let's say that it is an event, so it's time-based. Well, anything that's going to take too long, you don't have time to do it, that's red.
Mhm.
Anything where you have time, so it's very easy to get done in time, is green. So that also helps you clarify what you want to focus on. And if ROI is your goal, like, hey, we just want to grow. We want to grow as quickly as possible. So where can we achieve massive ROI? Then you look for green ROI. And so having a decision matrix like that makes innovation, makes creativity come to life a lot easier and tangibly. And it's a way that you can articulate it with a client where they're going to understand it, and they can also message it to a CEO or a CFO, whoever needs to be involved in the decision.
I love it. I love it. So let me ask, do you typically run through a matrix like this internally at the agency before you make the presentation of potential ideas with the client? Or do you prefer to do combined brainstorming session where you kind of go through the matrix together, their marketing team and your team as well?
So typically we'll go through it first
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll present to the client. But there's nothing saying that you can't collaborate, you can't brainstorm together with the client team as well.
Right. Right. No, I love this, and I think that one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and you kind of already segued into it a bit, is how do you create a culture within your agency where people on your teams feel comfortable coming up with the crazy or the big idea? And I imagine having the matrix to work through helps people feel a little bit more brave about bringing ideas to you or to the account lead, as the case may be. Um, but what are some of the other things you think about internalizing within your agency so that you're creating this culture of creativity and problem solving, so that everybody feels, empowered to bring forward some of their best ideas, even if they feel a little bit off the rails at the beginning because it's something you haven't tried before, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's several things that you can do. So one thing is you want to have a culture of applauding people and not only their successes but their ideas. Um,
Hmm.
and we try and do that internally here. Stratabeat is we have multiple opportunities during the week. We're fully remote, but we all communicate in Slack, and so we're constantly applauding each other in Slack. We have a 1 hour team meeting every Monday morning, and so we're applauding people then. And so, yeah, it's not just about the wins, but we certainly do celebrate everyone's wins, even if they're small wins, incremental wins, or if they're quite significant wins. We want to celebrate everyone's wins equally.
Hmm.
Um, and then we also want to foster a culture of brainstorming. And so it's interesting, right? So I sometimes will ask prospects and I'll sometimes ask clients, what percentage of the time is your team thinking of new things? So brainstorming, right?
Right.
Brainstorming something that doesn't exist today, or a
Yeah.
different iteration of it, right? How much time do you spend? Is it 1% of your time? Is it 10% of your time? Is it 20% of your time? And typically it is less than 1% or it's zero, right?
I
Most,
know. I know, that's so amazing to me and so true. And I mean, in all the agency, and I talk to a lot of agencies, they're so plowed over by the day to day of getting the client deliverables out the door and answering the client's questions that there's just there's no zone of breathing room to even, there's no thinking time that's socialized into the weekly, work week. And, we're guilty of this as owners for ourselves and our own business, but our teams don't really get the breathing time that they need either to really do deep thinking.
right. And so it is the owner's or the CEO's responsibility to
Yeah.
make it very clear to everyone that it's expected, it's applauded, it's welcome, that you should be brainstorming, you should be taking the time to think deeply, to dive deeper than the client, right?
Right.
And I posted something on LinkedIn the other day talking about it was all about new ideas and being innovative and all that. And someone posted saying, "Oh, but we as agencies never have the time. So how do you square with that?" I was like, "What are you talking about? You make the time, you prioritize the time. If
Yeah.
you're the CEO, you
Yeah.
dictate how you're going to run the business. And if you don't prioritize that, you are prioritizing just being busy for being busy's sake. And granted, I'm not saying that agencies are not busy, because I get it. Like, everyone is super busy, but it's all about prioritization. What
Right.
is critical? What is important? What is strategic? And you must make time for that. And that must be part of your marketing program for your clients. It just must be. I can't imagine it not being part of it.
Right. Well, I mean, and this brings a whole list of questions forward about, well, then how do we model our business and model our pricing so that we're building enough time in? for
Yep.
that breathing space and that thinking space. Those are big questions for every agency to think about for themselves. But the business development opportunities for the agency itself that arise from sort of that white space that you've
Yep.
used to create for clients, and think of where your best case studies come from that you use to get your next client. It's from some set of awesome results you've achieved for a client that you just served, right? And
Right.
that didn't happen by accident. That happened because somebody had a great idea, it was implemented well, et cetera, et cetera. It was measurable, all those things. And you got to have the white space to do that. And I know it sounds probably to some of you listening like that's a platitude or nice to have, but you're in the business of generating ideas for your clients. I mean, they're not, and the industry is more and more pressured to do this because the actual creating of the stuff, clients are willing to pay less and less for that as time goes on, but they
Yes.
will pay more and more for strategy, ingenuity, innovation, as you pointed out, Tom. So you need the white space to do that. So I'm with you. I don't know how you can afford not to do it. But I also know it's easy to get bowled over with the day to day. And so every owner has to make a choice for themselves and their agencies about how they're going to address that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Um, to us, that is the value of an agency is being strategic,
Yeah.
right? Um, if you're not, and you're just an order taker, there is a place for order takers. There is, certain businesses want that.
Right.
But strategy is where you add value and where you add growth. It's where you figure, like, to us, strategy is all about how are you going to win, right? That's what strategy is. It's how are you going to win in which market, right? Which audience segments, and how are you going to win? How are you going to win consistently? How are you going to win reliably? And if you can't answer that, and a lot of companies can't,
Right.
what they answer is, oh, we do email nurturing, or we do SEO, or we do this, or we do that. No, 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 that's not a strategy. That's not a strategy. It
Mhm.
might be a channel, it might be a platform, a marketing vehicle, but there's not a strategy of how are you going to win. And so what we love talking about with clients and really helping them refine this is figuring out, what is their strategy to win?
Right. Well, and I think the not having that sort of that white space, that strategic thinking time so that you can be creative in how you look at your clients' businesses. There's lots of different ways that can show up, right? That can show up in new ideas, new tactics to suggest to try, but it can also show up in the form of having deep understanding of your clients and their businesses. And one of the things that you are doing and have done is using proprietary research of your own as an agency, which takes a lot of creativity because we've done research of our own as a law firm into the agency world, and so you got to be creative about the questions you ask. You've got to be creative about what your use cases are going to be for the results, et cetera, et cetera. But walk through a little bit your experience of deciding to do that, and maybe what you've learned that about going through the process that maybe surprised you about doing it, and what some of the upsides or benefits have been for your agency.
Yeah, yeah. So we love proprietary research and proprietary insights. And we've been pushing our clients to lean into it for a very long time. It's fantastic on so many different levels. One, it helps differentiate your brand. It helps you cut through all the noise because you have something new to say, something that is evidence-based, data-based, right?
Right.
And only you have that data. It's a fantastic way to get media hits. So it's fantastic from a PR perspective. It's a fantastic way to, for instance, be invited to conferences and speak at conferences about the findings of your research,
Right.
or to get published, or let's think about lead generation, right? It's fantastic for lead generation because you are able to have unique conversations. It validates that you are an expert in the field. Um, And something, so for instance, with proprietary research that we recently did, we looked at 250 B2B technology websites. And what we were doing was we were analyzing over 15,000 data points to look at what works in B2B tech SEO today. There's so much change going on in SEO. Google is changing
Yep, AI.
rapidly, right? And we just, instead of reading what others think and what their opinion is and where they think things are going, we wanted to see actual data. What is happening with B2B tech websites today? What is working? What is not working? And we wanted to narrow it down specifically, right? So
Right.
just looking at the data and ignoring everything else.
Mhm.
And it was really fantastic. We have been invited to speak at about a half dozen industry conferences to share the results. We've been interviewed on many different podcasts about the results. It provides content for us to feed into our blog and our articles, right? It's also
Right.
something that we can share with clients. It's something that we can share with prospects. And it's something that now we can own, right? Because this is a living, breathing database that we have that we will be updating constantly. And so it's not just a one-time campaign and then campaign
Right.
kind of ends and dies. This is going to be living and breathing for years to come. And then also, on top of all of these benefits, look at the SEO benefits of doing original research. The number of backlinks that you can secure from doing original research is very high. And backlinks are, one of the most effective things that you can do in SEO. And ironically, the research that we did, the proprietary research that we did, found that those companies those B2B tech companies that were offering original research in their websites were crushing it much more than those websites that did not offer original research. So it's kind of a meta
Yeah, I was
conversation.
gonna say that's very meta. That's exactly what I was gonna say about it. It's kind of meta, but I mean, I suppose that's a good goal to find that out if you're gonna do the research, that the research is right about the research,
Right.
the impact of the research. So how did you decide what the focus and thrust of your because there's a lot of ways you could have gone in terms of your questions, right? And so how did you bring creativity to bear to decide what are we going to ask about? What are we going to learn about? What's going to give us the biggest, bang for our buck in terms of time and money um to learning what we want to learn? How did you sort of narrow it?
Yeah, so it was very exploratory. Like I said, we looked at over 15,000 data points. Did we have to look at over 15,000 data points? Probably not, right? Probably not. That might have been overkill.
Yeah.
But we really wanted to explore the basics, but also things that no one talks about in the world of SEO. So if you go to an SEO conference, for example, one of the things you never see a session on is audience segmentation.
Mhm.
I've been in the SEO industry since 2005. So that's a really long time to be in SEO.
Yep.
And I don't think I've ever been to a conference where anyone talked about audience segmentation and the value of audience segmentation in SEO. And we said, well, no one else seems to be talking about it, so maybe we should be the ones talking about it. So we included those types of data points in our study, right?
Mhm.
To see, okay, does it matter? Does it impact SEO results? And if so, by how much? Like just because it impacts, it might impact it only a little bit and
Right.
not
Right.
very important.
Right.
But what we found was audience segmentation impacts SEO results significantly. And so those websites that were segmenting the audience were performing much better from an SEO perspective than those who were not segmenting the audience. Now, there are a lot
Mhm.
of reasons that we are that we're coming up with for this. For example, we believe that it is easier and faster to win on industry specific long tail keywords as it is to win more generically, right? Where there's higher competition.
Mhm.
Also, when you win on, let's say, an industry specific topic, then it's a more highly qualified searcher, right? If they're searching based on their particular industry,
Mhm.
automatically you're getting a more highly qualified searcher than someone who's just typing in something very generic and you're not really sure what their intent is.
Right.
And so, and you can have a more targeted, more specific, customized conversation with them, on and on and on. And so it makes sense from many perspectives, but the fact that we've never seen anyone talk about it, we've never seen anyone do a study on it. It just gives you, the more that you can be exploratory in your
Mhm.
approach and not try and stay within your lane, so to speak, it just leads you in different directions. And there was a lot of data that we left out of the final reporting on the study, right? It was either inconclusive or it wasn't interesting.
Mhm.
And so by being exploratory and kind of going out there and doing things that no one else perhaps has done before, it just gives you more options, which is always a good thing.
Right. Well, and it's another I mean, it's just a prime example of applying creativity because there's a million ways you could go, right? And a million use cases for the end results of the research too. And each of those require creative decisions along the way. And so I think this has just been a great exercise in the possible for agencies and thinking about creativity and how they apply it to their business thinking, to their creative, actual purely creative decisions, and how they strategize for their clients, and how they culture it internally in the agency. So I really have really enjoyed the conversation. I think that it's it's good to take a step back and look at the fact that agencies are intended to be there, um, for their ingenuity, for their ideation, for their strategy, for their creativity, and you're building a really good case study for that for me just by sharing your experiences. So, Tom, I really appreciate it. I'd love for you to share how folks can get in touch with you, the agency, or learn more about your research that you've just done.
Yeah, sure, sure. Thanks. And Sharon, thanks so much for having me on. Really, really appreciate it. It's
Been a
been really
pleasure.
enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so folks can find me and the agency Stratabeat. The easiest way is just to go to our website, stratabeat.com. And you can see, well, right now, if you go into our resources section, right at the very, very top of our resources page and our blog, you will see uh, information about the proprietary research that we just did,
Mhm.
provide you with links to go to the landing page and download the research. Um, Also, I welcome anyone who wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. If you just search for Tom Shapiro, I'm usually one of the top ones that pops up. And also my URL is just Tom Shapiro, so it's nice and easy. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, so invite everyone to contact me on LinkedIn. Would love to hear from you.
All right, everyone, inviting you to think more creatively about how you are helping your clients. And this was a really great leap off on jump start for thinking about what creativity means and all the different things that it means for you and your agency. So we will talk with you all next time. Thank you for enjoying and joining us today. And Tom, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Sharon, thank you so much.